Welcome into the Royal Cougars podcast, and this is episode 4. We are here. We have made it. It is game day. It is officially here. We've got BYU facing off against Portland State, and it's been a long off season. And I'm excited. I know everybody else is excited in Cougar Nation. Can't wait for kickoff at 6 p.m. And it's going to be a blowout. It's going to be, one of those games that's well in the books before halftime. Even hopefully that's the case. Hopefully it's not another 2017 performance against the Vikings, 20-6, and the old barn burner that wasn't. It's going to be a fun one. It's going to be good to be back in the stadium at Lavelle Edwards Stadium in Provo. But I wanted to have on someone who's played the game, somebody who has been on that field before, to be able to talk about the season opener, particularly discuss the defense, the depth chart, and he's somebody who talks about it every single day. It's my former boss, Ben Criddle, ESPN, the Fan radio in Utah County. He talks about the Cougars every single day, and I couldn't think of a better person to talk to for this season opener. So here is my conversation with Ben Criddle. My next guest on the Royal Cougars podcast is my old boss. He's a good friend. He's a father. He's a husband now. A lot has changed in the past few years.
I was a husband before I was a father.
Just that's true. That's true. It's true. Especially in this environment and this culture, that needs to be stated. Not to go against anybody in the personal choices that people make. Sure. But yeah, no, for sure. But he's the owner of OrthoPros. So if you need to get braced up for your kids and sports, he's the guy for that. He's a former BYU football player from the golden era of my teenage years, watching him on the field. And he also is the man you can hear on the mic every afternoon on ESPN radio. You can also get some awesome threads from the man. I'm wearing some today, some Royal Army brand.
That's a great tee on you, man. And that's one of my favorite pieces, actually, that Royal Army has put together. So
no, it's great. He's the one and only Ben Criddle. It's a long intro, but I had to go through all of it, Ben. You're the man, and I appreciate you hopping on the Royal Cougars podcast. I know that you've had a lot leading up on your show this week to the Portland State opener this Saturday. We're talking on the Thursday before game day. And I guess I want to start with something that you had on today. I haven't had a chance to listen to your interview yet, but you had Bear Bachmeier, BYU quarterback. You had his older brother, Hank, on your show. What can you tell me about what you learned about Bear from that conversation? And I guess in a two-part question, even though a lot of people hate two-part questions, what do you make just of Bear and his opportunity to make history as BYU's first true freshman quarterback to start a season?
Yeah, as far as the conversation that we had with Hank, I realized how similar in personality Hank, Tiger, and Bear are. They're very pretty even keel, stoic, soft spoken. I wouldn't say they're overly dynamic in their speech and with high energy or anything like that. It's just pretty even keel, low key, laid back, very intelligent, very articulate. You can tell their upbringing was unique. They were homeschooled. Their dad is a military guy, but it was a bunch of boys, one girl, 4 boys, 1 girl growing up. And so there was a lot of chaos. So you got to imagine homeschooled. They all played sports. They're all competitive. Military dad. Hank said they didn't come from a whole lot as far as financial means. And they're extremely just hardworking, intelligent, grounded, not entitled humans. And they're Catholic. So they have a religious upbringing as well. And I can see why why Tiger and Bear are great fits at BYU, culturally, morally, spiritually, academically. Tiger graduated with a computer science degree at Stanford in 2.5 years. I imagine Hank was a 4.0 student. Bear extremely just impressive human. They sing, they dance, they play the guitar, they play board games. I mean, they're nerds, dude. Like they fit in at BYU. You know, they're cool. They love. I think Bear or Tiger told me like they love to play chess. I'm like, bro, you gotta bring the chessboard into the locker room. We had ping pong, we had shuffleboard. Apparently, they've been playing Settlers of Catan over at Kian Need's house. So I mean, they're playing board games. I'm like, bro, you guys sure? You guys, don't you guys fit in pretty well. These Latter Day Saint, you know, football players here. So, yeah, I really like them a lot. I like Tiger. I like Bear. I like Hank. I think they're a great fit for BYU. I was surprised. I asked Hank if he was ever recruited by BYU, and he said only when he was coming out of the portal. He only had one conversation with A-Rod when he was coming out of the portal, when he ended up, I think, at Wake Forest, and but so it didn't go anywhere there. But what in doing my research prior to the interview with Hank, I mean, he had thrown for 11,000 yards.
Yeah.
And I think he played 50 games as a college football player, which is a little bit higher than most because of the COVID year. And, he got a year back and maybe had a medical too. So, 50 games, 11,000 yards, a lot of yards. So great football pedigree in the Bachmeier family. Great athletes, great people. And I think A-Rod, if you look at, who A-Rod is and his personality, he's an analytical, stoic, introvert, film junkie, and A-Rod is not an entitled person, never has been, went to Rick's, came to BYU as a wide receiver, was a punt returner wide receiver, but he wasn't like the star of BYU and in the mid-90s, in the late 90s, gritty. And so I think when the personalities are similar to his, in some ways, Jake's a little bit, Jake Retzloff, who was, I think, also A-Rod's guy. Even Keaton was, Keaton, when he came in, like, these kids aren't entitled. They're not entitled. They're hardworking. They're coachable. And I think it just fits. And so I know that when A-Rod first evaluated Bear, I believe Bear came to BYU's camp, I want to say in 8th grade, and A-Rod loved him from the beginning, wanted him, recruited him, offered him pretty early in the process. And Bear had the pick of the litter. You've seen his offer sheet.
Yeah.
Ended up at Stanford. His brother was there. Academic family. Just a good fit. They're California kids too. So I don't know. I know I'm elaborating on it, but I can see why Bear became the starting quarterback at BYU with limited time. Photographic memory per his quarterback's coach, Sean Sims, who we've had on the show. And so Matt Mitchell spent a lot of time with him, a quarterback's coach, senior analyst, I think, is in quarterback's coach. And he was able to get up to speed. Granted, the playbook has been simplified, and they did that simplification actually due to the fact that Jake's best games last year and his most productive games came when they simplified and ran tempo and a little bit of backyard football. So you look at the game-winning drive, Oklahoma State. You look at ASU second half. You look at some of these like productive halves. I don't know if Jake ever put together two halves. Even Baylor first half. It was simplified. It was tempo and a little bit of backyard football. And QB run game too involved in that. So they simplified it, and that's benefited Bear in his acclimation period and ultimate achievement of being the starting quarterback to start game 1, 2025. I don't know if any.
No, that's good information. And kind of going off of that with the simplification of the playbook. I mean, obviously he said that he's met with Matt Mitchell. They've gone through the playbook almost on a daily basis, it seems like, over the last couple of months since he's been in Provo. And really, it does seem hard to fathom, to learn an entire offense in that time. And I can understand like learning like the concepts, the reads, the routes that he's supposed to look for, the checks, all those types of things. But until you see, live bullets come at you, when he sees even Portland State, Stanford, East Carolina, the first 3 games, those are going to be valuable learning opportunities, and then film study off of those. It's probably going to be more learning done in those 3 games in the weeks following than he has this past summer and in fall camp. But you mentioned the simplification of the offense. I want to touch on that. With that, do you think that will help BYU cut down on some of the turnovers that Jake had last year? He throws 12 interceptions a season ago, but the team wins 11 games, right? I think back to like when you were playing your last 2 years in Provo, you guys won 11 games each. You obviously had awesome quarterback play in each of those years, but is it something where it's to take what the rest of the team is around him and have them lift him up as a freshman so he doesn't have to do too much? Is that part of the simplification of his understanding of the offense so the rest of the guys around him can do what they can do best to get to like an 11-win mark again, or something like that?
I think I think that the complexity of the offense could be expounded because of like the tenure of those guys. I think that the surrounding structure, the wide receivers, tight ends, running backs, they could probably take on more, and they probably want more. You want more from a, option routes, or, depending on a coverage, you can run a different route if the quarterback is capable of also being on the same page. Complexity at the National Football League level, is where you would ideally like to be, because you're a full-time professional and you need to have nuances and complexity in order to adapt pre-snap and post-snap. So there's post-snap adjustments,
Sure.
pre-snap adjustments. You know, and so ideally you would like complexity, quite honestly. But at the collegiate level and the high school level, the teams that simplify typically thrive. In the NFL, I think there's a necessity for complexity. And those that can't adapt to the complexity typically struggle. And they can't move the football because the defenses are just so dynamic, and they can force you to do things that you didn't plan from the huddle. You come out of the huddle and say, all right, we got the play call.
Sure.
And you're literally changing everything due to the look they give you and due to the adjustments throughout your cadence. So what I would say is simplifying for Bear allows for him to be able to give it to playmakers and get through his progressions a little bit faster and make a decision rather than holding onto the ball too long and overthinking. And because when you overthink, you do hold onto the ball, you get sacked. When you overthink, you may be guessing because you're supposed to go through a progression. I look at true freshmen in BYU football history that have had success, and most of them have had a simplified structure. Back end of the Jake Heaps era, it became very simplified. And BYU was able to move the sticks. Tanner Mangum in 2015, after taking over Taysom Hill, it became very simplified. I mean, how many times did you see Tanner Mangum just like start scrambling to his right and throw on right? He made a lot of plays just rolling right and then throwing the ball, not really going through a traditional progression. So you set yourself up for a certain amount of success with that simplification for Bear, and then you hope that if you get a one-on-one and it's a one-on-one, right, then you can throw it to that one-on-one matchup, and your playmaker, your tenured Chase Roberts, right, it can make a play. Carson Ryan can make a play. LJ Martin versus a linebacker coming out of the backfield can make a play. Go back to 2007. 2007 is an interesting study because most people look at 2007. You mentioned 11-2 season, top 25 finish, and I think we may have finished higher. I don't know. I'd have to go back and look in 2007 than we do in 2006. But the offensive productivity was middle of the pack. It wasn't like an overly prolific offense, even though you had Max and Austin and Dennis and Harvey. But what you'll see is, a solid run game, and you'll see, a decent amount of like play action pass to Austin and Dennis. And then you'll see a lot of like option routes, angles, swings, screen game to tight ends and running backs. Harvey was fantastic for Max as a young quarterback, right? He was really good. 07, like such a good receiving running. Manasseh, I don't know if Manasseh was 06, and I think he may have, can't remember, but like you get these running backs that are good in receiving and they're good in pass pro, and they're all down backs, every down backs, can run it in between the tackles, can run off tackle, good in pass pro, good in receiving. And LJ should be, a Harvey Unga type, right? In his ability to be just well-rounded and be able to offset. So we were talking about like the safety net for Bear Bachmeier, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, safety net could be a wide receiver like Chase. It could be Carson Ryan. It could be LJ Martin. It's just nice to know like you have a one-on-one and just like go let him make the play. Get it to him quick and then let him make somebody miss in that one-on-one. And that's where maybe simplification also is a big component to the offense. Like pick your one-on-one and get it to your playmaker and let them make the play. So anyway, I don't know if that answered your question in its entirety, but
yeah, no, it did. I did look at it while you were talking. You finished 14th in 07, and it was 15th and 16th in the respective polls a year before that. So yeah, but those 2 years, it just shows a lot, that transition from John to Max and having the talent around him too.
It was 2 top 10 defenses those 2 years. Like actually 06 defense was actually better to it in points per game. 2007 wasn't as good points per game, but like it was still a top 10 defense that year, which also is another component. We're talking about Bear Bachmeier, right? Does he have a top 25 defense? Does he have a top 25 special teams unit? We had a really good special teams unit that year when Max started. He was a redshirt sophomore. He became the winningest quarterback in BYU football history, but like, it's not like Max was winning BYU football games. Max wasn't winning those games for us like in 07. It was the defense and special teams that won those games to a degree. Like, because the offense was middle of the pack. If you go back and if you look at some of the efficiency stats, and not to say they did have some good games. The Tulsa game was a game that the defense had to actually end up losing. That was horrible game. Gus Malzahn was the OC, and that was the best offense in college football that year. Tulsa's was.
Yeah.
Gus, we know where Gus went after that. He went to Auburn as the head coach. So won a national championship with Cam Newton. So it wasn't 07 to 2010 or whatever it was when they won it. Well, that's not too far off from what he was doing. He was producing at a high level. But yeah, the defense, that game was horrific. But every other game, you could make an argument that the defense was winning the game. UCLA loss was not on the defense. That was on the offense, just not being able to score. Or turning the ball over, what have you. So, yeah. So it's nice to have. Bear needs that top 25 defense, needs the special teams unit, Kelly Pinga's special teams unit to go out and win football games. And Bear needs to make good decisions, pick his one-on-ones, hand the ball off to LJ and Sione Moa, and also cover up when he's toting the ball. Hopefully stays healthy. And you'll continue to move the sticks. Aaron Roderick has been adamant that they're going to be able to run the ball effectively. If the offensive line's healthy, that returning offensive line is tenured, it is talented, it's physical. I like it. I like it a lot. I think it could be a better offensive line than last year, especially in the run game. Because I think actually Andrew Gentry and Isaiah Jada combined are a little bit more physical than Caleb and Braden. Braden and Caleb are super long and great tackles in the pass pro, and they were solid in the run game. But I actually think those other two, although not as Andrew's probably pretty long, probably similar to that of Braden. Isaiah's not as long, but I would say they're a little bit more aggressive in the run game. Waylon, we got to get him back. He may be limited, but Austin Leus is nice. Bruce Mitchell's very physical. Right guard is I think it'll be interesting to see how who's available with Waylon out and how they're going to utilize that offensive line depth. But I think we're going to be able to run the ball, and that'll help Bear tremendously. And I wrote a piece on KSL.com about essentially enumerating all the reasons why Bear has a good chance, a solid chance. I didn't say great, I didn't say elite chance, but a good chance to be successful this season. And there's a lot of reasons why he could be successful this season. He's got a great supporting cast. They got the continuity, the chemistry of culture, of standard operating procedures, of schematics that have been in place for a long time. Other true freshman quarterbacks haven't always had the luxury of all of the things that Bear Bachmeier has surrounding him, and that's why it's not as much of a gamble to trot out a true freshman this year as a comparatively speaking to other years.
No, and I think that it's not apples to apples, but I do think that looking back to, Jake obviously had a few games this season before he took over as the starter last year and played the end of the season in 23. But, coming in, he's a little older, has some more experience in playing time, JUCO obviously, but the talent around him on the offense, guys like Chase, he has, I feel like, more weapons to work with on the offensive side this year than Jake did last year. And then I wanted to talk about the defense with you because I do feel like, obviously you lose a guy like Tyler Batty, awesome player, stud leader, all of those things that we could go on about Tyler and how great of a player he was for BYU. And even the jump that I feel like he made from a junior year where he was really good to his senior year where I feel like he was even better. And, you saw, the success that he had in his short stint in the preseason before he got injured with the Vikings. But there is talent that has been added to the defense. And granted, year to year, you're going to have changes no matter what. But you bring in a guy like Keanu, you feel like your linebacking core is just as good with those same guys as they were a year ago. More experience now with Jack and Isaiah. But that back end of the defense in particular, I'm really excited about those guys. And it seems like Jay Hill is as well, thinks that, that safety group is really versatile and has a lot of talent in it. But you look at last year, they were able to force a ton of turnovers, led the nation in interceptions. Speaking from your background as a DB, do you think that the talent group in this season's, defensive roster is going to be able to, maintain that level from an 11-win team a year ago where the defense is going to be able to win those games like they did in 07 for Max?
I think so. I think it's an expectation. I think there's a standard. I think you have a great coach. You have a great culture on the defensive side of the ball. You have a lot of defensive assets. Kalani was the DC. Remember, I've brought this up before. It's like Kyle Whittingham elevated Kalani to DC before he did Morgan Scalley or Jay Hill. So Kalani's a good DC. So you have that going for you. You have Gary Anderson, who was one of the best head coaches in college football for a while and got a job after Wisconsin, Oregon State, and then, he went back to Utah State and now he's like a senior analyst, consultant for BYU football. Like he's on the defensive staff. You have Kelly Papinga, who's been a co-defensive coordinator. I think Justin Enna has been a defensive coordinator. I want to say it at Utah Tech. You have Jay Hill, who's one of the best defensive minds. So, and you now have a few years of Jay and this staff ultimately recruiting to the scheme, which is also beneficial, and ultimately inculcating the techniques, terminology, and effort and execution that they expect from each individual position group and so now you're gaining with the talent, the clay, position mastery. And you did lose some good talent. Like, it is difficult. Like, I do think there's some depth question marks along the defensive line when you lose John Nelson and Blake Mangelson and Tyler Batty and Isaiah Banya, who are in the system and had a tremendous amount of experience in college football, and we're just good football players, right? But also got some good football players right now, like experienced football players. I think John Telmekpeo is nice. Keanu Tanavasa is a monster. Justin Kirkland needs to get healthy. Anisi Purcell has a lot of experience as a college football player at SUU. On that defensive tackle side of things, there's some question marks in the two deep. I think a defensive tackle with Justin you have three guys I think that are good, and the others like that. It makes me want to go to more of a 30 front than a 40 front because I don't know if we have the depth just yet. I think Jay Hill described it as it's good, but you could tell he's like, it's a stretch. D end, if you're running a 30 front, I love Vili and Bodie, Vili Amipuha and Bodie, and then you have Logan Latui who can, like, Logan and Orion Miley Kafusi are both like really stout, violent run stoppers for their size at like 6'2", 260 and 6'3", 245. But they're super violent at the point of attack. They take on pulling guards and they stand up 300-pound, 6'5" guards that are pulling towards them. They're really grounded and explosive, and they have violent hands and violent head. So, which if you go more of a 30 front, let's say you're going like 60-40, 30 front to 40 front, or even 70-30. I think those guys can stop the run well, and then you have so many freaking playmakers at four linebacker spots. Or you can go you can go nickel there, right? You can go 3-3-5. And when you go into 10 personnel, one back, zero tight ends, and you're going four wide, and you can bring Tommy Prastis in at nickel. It'll be intriguing to see how the Big 12 personnel changes what Jay wants to do defensively. But there's a lot of nice variations if we're going to see a majority 30 front this year. And I know BYU fans want to see 40 front all day. And you're going to see that. What you'll see is Jack Kelly and Ephraim Asiata and Isaiah Glasker and like there's a lot of guys, Ace Kafusi, Shea Bryant. Like, you can line those guys up as pass rushers at a 2-point. Think back to Colby Clausen and Jordan Pendleton and Brian Keel and David Nixon and these outside edge linebackers that can cover but also can get really in the run game, and also in passing situations just get after the quarterback with a speed rush or a bull rush. They're strong, they're fast, they're explosive. Force equals mass times acceleration. And so if you're an accelerated player, you can get into some really fun pass rushing situations. So I would love to see the Jack Kelly involved in the pass rush. So second level defenders, that's where a lot of your NFL guys are. And Keanu's obviously a first, second round draft pick next year, which is, and you put him in a zero tech. I mean, that he doesn't want anything. Like, I can't tell you how many like fumbled snaps or bad snaps can occur when you put Keanu in a zero tech. That center is not ready for Keanu.
Yeah.
And for him personally, when he probably wants to be in a 2-eye or 3 technique, or he wants to get a one-on-one and get after the quarterback. But like, I mean,
I feel like we said the same kind of stuff a few years ago about Kyrus, though. Like, similar, like, ability to, like, train him against his own ways of wanting to get to the QB.
The difference is, like, Keanu's twitchy, and Kyrus and has a much lower pad level, and Kyrus was a little bit of a project. Keanu's been playing defensive tackle, nose guard, for all of his life. So he's much more refined. Kyrus was he was a converted tight end. Remember, Kyrus was a 2-star, No one recruited him. He was an Elisha Tuiaki guy, so I know some don't like Elisha, but he got Jakairos Tonga. He's pretty good football player, and he projected him as a defensive lineman in a nose guard, and he became that. He was a really good football player. So, and now he's in the league, right? He's with Chicago, Arizona, now he's with New England, and he's only now really developing as a dynamic defensive tackle. Keanu he's that, but he's not sloppy big. He's thick and explosive, twitchy, violent, and he's got a high motor too. Like there's a difference, huge difference between even what Kairos was. Think of Keanu as a bigger Travis Tuiloma. That's how you got to think of him. And if you remember Travis was like a little silverback gorilla. Like he was just so strong and penetrative, and it would just force himself into the backfield. Keanu's that, but he's bigger. So, and that's dangerous. So yeah, the defense needs to be a top 25 team. If they're not, I will be blown away.
Real quick, last question on the defense. You mentioned those guys on the outside. You mentioned Bodie, Ville. You got Logan on the other side. Jay seems to think and believe that he's got a lot more speed off the edge this season.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think, is that something you agree with, that statement, and BYU's ability to get after the quarterback more so because of those guys off the edge this year than past?
At linebacker, yeah. Like Isaiah Glasker, Ephraim Asiata, Siale Serra, Shea Bryant Strother, Jack Kelly, Ace Kaufusi. When you're getting those guys involved in the run in the pass rush, that's where it gets really dynamic off the edge. That's where it gets really explosive off the edge. Logan's a bull rusher. Ryan Miley is Kaufusi is more of a nifty pass rusher. Really good like hands. Think of like Mosesi Kamatule. He was like a really, I know he didn't produce a whole lot, but he was like super nifty with his hands and things of that nature. Like I wouldn't say like Bodie and Ville are like speed rushers. Those guys are bull rushers, and Ville will probably throw like an inside spin move or something like that. But most of those guys are going to be stunted into true pressures. The dynamic pass rushers come from, in my opinion, that second level that roll up into a 2-point. And like they are fast. They are freaking strong. There's length there. Micah Kaufusi is like dynamic, dude. Like, it's a lot of good athletes in that linebacker room. We tend to gravitate towards QBU. Like, bro, we're LBU. We're and not to take anything away from our quarterbacks that have been so good. Taysom in the NFL, who's obviously the quarterback, he can do it all. Zach, Jaron, Keaton, those are all like it's pretty good lineup over the last decade of quarterbacks that have started games in the National Football League and are still playing football in the National Football League. I know Jaron was released, but hopefully he gets picked up.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, even just like you look at Kyle Van Noy and what he's been over to do over the last decade plus in the league, and he had his best sack season a year ago. And Fred, they just came out with the NFL Top 100, and he was number 16, and he's been on it for 6 years in a row or whatever it is now, and he's one of the best, if not the best, linebacker in the NFL. So I think you're spot on there. But last question for you, Ben, before I let you go, because I want you to get back with your fam. And I appreciate your time today, but I do want to mention those 06 and 07 teams again. You guys won conference championships. You won a ring. BYU's now back into the dance of being able to fight for a conference championship. And I know that last season was disappointing in a lot of ways with the Kansas and ASU results and that tiebreaker that prevented things from ending up in Arlington and a chance for a title. But now you're still in the mix after a loss or two, like you weren't, for a decade plus with Independence. As an alum, a former player, what does that mean for you? And what do you think it means for these guys that are currently on the team that chance to be able to play for not just the college football playoff, national championship, all that stuff that everybody aspires to, but the Big 12 championship and being able to find yourself in Arlington at the end of the season.
I think every season and every game, a story must be told, right? Very few people in life are get after every single day in a competitive mindset of putting forth their best effort in order to accomplish um, every single goal that they have before them. And so, you have to have a sense of urgency about what you do. You have to have goals. You have to set them. You have to go try to accomplish them. You know, um, we all want hope, right? Why do we set goals? Because we have hope, and you have hope for, best outcomes. You have hope for your best outcomes individually, collectively, as a family, and whenever you're in the corporate world, you hope that you hope that you keep your job and you're successful within the team and all those things, right? Within the corporate team that you're on. And so for BYU football, like the hope is that you win a conference championship. The hope is that you win all your games. And when you do have one or two, three losses, right, in college football, the college football cannibalism and the parity and the depth that has occurred in the Big 12, the Pac 12, even you saw in the SEC this last year, and you're going to see in the ACC, with the NIL transfer portal, there's just more parity. And so that means in conference, you're going to see 2, 3, 4 lost teams, right, like you did last year. That's my opinion. There could be, like, it'll be more NFL-esque, right? That's what you see in the NFL is like there's so many good teams, right? Yeah, there's some, but like, I mean, how often do you have a one-loss NFL team, two-loss? Like, it's just so rare. It's so hard to do. You're going to lose games in a 12-game season, especially with the distribution or redistribution of wealth of talent and distribution of great coaches. So going back to like the hope that you have to win a conference championship, you can lose 2 games, right, and still have hope. And the coaching staff can continue to tell a story about the importance of the next game. And so that's where that motivation comes from. And you do have to dangle carrots sometimes. There are distractions. I've been talking about distractions forever. Like, you limit distractions, you find productivity, you find success, you simplify sacrifice, you have success in life and in football. And so the coaches have to be able to weave a story of importance for every game, even Portland State. Like, there's no reason not to come out and execute at the highest of levels, because anything can happen. Now, the odds makers will tell you 44.5 should be the spread, and BYU should, they're trying to get some, betting lines going there and to get people rambunctious and start spending some of their money. And, is the story to say, hey, we should be, we should cover. Good teams win, great teams cover. Like, I don't know, maybe that would, hit home for some players on the team. But like, you have to tell a story, and maybe you show them a highlight of BYU Portland State in 2017. Right? And you're like, look at what happened in 2017, 20-6. This will not happen. I don't want them to have hope, right? I don't want any hope. Like, I don't want them to think that they're even, should even be there. They're there to get a check and get demolished and then go home. And they hope they don't get injured. That's what their hope should be. And our hope should be, that there's never even hope that creeps into their mind that, hey, we can compete. No, don't even let them hope. So, in Stanford, that's the news story. What's the next story? And there should be a story interwoven with, hope of like, we want to win a championship. And the great thing is if you lose a game, so what? Like, more like the probabilities are that there's going to be 2 and 3 lost teams that we're competing once again for a conference championship. So even if you're a 3-loss team, win out. And the story has to continue to be told as like, you're going to have to compete for the rest of your life, and you're going to have to show up every single day and give forth your best effort, or otherwise you could get fired. Otherwise you're going to lose. Otherwise you're not going to be able to take care of your family. So realize now's the time to set up those habits of execution and high level hope and effort to win, and just standardize that, habitualize that, and you're going to have probably more stability and more success and more happiness in your life when you're doing it that way. So I love conference championships. I got 2 conference rings, and it was awesome. It was special. But you know what I think about? I do think about I think about those conference championships and how great they were and the defenses was a part of, but I also think about like we should have won those 4 games that we lost. I lost 4 games in my collegiate career as a player, in those 2 years. And I hate to say it, but I think about those losses more than I think about all the wins. And I hate that. I want those back,
That doesn't surprise me knowing you at all. Doesn't surprise me one bit.
But we still had that, even though you lost some games early, like our hope, we still had our conference championship to play for.
Yeah.
Right. You lost games in non-conference is how it would happen with us. And so there was a little bit of like, independence was tough, obviously, because you lose one game and you're like, all right, what bowl game are we going to now? If you lose in non-conference, which we probably shouldn't this year, BYU shouldn't, it doesn't really matter, right? You got conference play to get into, and you never know what can happen in conference play.
He's the one and only Ben Criddle. You can hear him every day on the airwaves in the afternoon on ESPN radio here in Utah. You can follow him on social media at Criddle Benjamin. Ben's got a great account on X, just puts out stuff nonstop throughout the day. If you're a BYU fan, you're just going to absorb it.
Why are you tweeting at 3 a.m., Ben?
For somebody who harps on social media and the evils of it, Ben is on social media more than he should be. But I will say, when Bear was talking about playing Settlers of Catan, the first person I thought of was you, because I'm like, at least he didn't say he was playing video games, because Ben would have not liked that about his quarterback.
Hey, man, getting together with the boys and playing Settlers of Catan and doing some strategy and learning a new skill set, because I don't think he's good. Kean Nee told me Bear's not very good at Settlers of Catan, so he's learning a new skill set, building some...
He's got chess, though. He's got chess. So chess, now Settlers.
He's probably pretty good at chess. There's no doubt.
Exactly.
Warmed the cockles of my heart. There's no doubt. I was like, no video games, bud. Stay away from
Exactly. Well, read Ben's article on KSL.com about Bear as well. And Ben, I appreciate you coming on. Also, people rep some Royal Army. Get ready for game day on Saturday. And also have to plug Ortho Pros because it's great. If you need a brace, Ben hooked me up with a nice brace a few years ago. I still wear it whenever I need it today. It's great. So I appreciate it, Ben, and thanks for your time today.
Love and appreciate you, Kyle. Talk to you soon.
That was my conversation with Ben Criddle. Once again, thank you to Ben for hopping on the podcast. Really appreciate him taking some time out of his afternoon. We recorded that on Thursday before kickoff on Saturday at 6 p.m. for BYU versus Portland State. But you can follow Ben again at Criddle Benjamin. That would be awesome of you to do so. Ben's always great about putting a lot of information out on social media about BYU. But you can follow the Royal Cougars podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, however you found it today. Be sure to subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. That really helps us be able to get out to other BYU fans and the rest of Cougar Nation who's looking for content like this, some fun interviews with people who cover BYU football in and out. And it's another fun thing for me to be able to talk to some of my former colleagues and people I work with continuing on today. But excited for kickoff at 6 p.m. I'm going to have some stuff up on royalcougars.com for post-game if you want to read that as a recap for the game against the Vikings. And we'll be back again next week to kind of recap things with the opener and then look ahead to BYU's second game against Stanford next week. But until then, this has been the Royal Cougars podcast. You can follow us on social media once again at Royal Cougars and visit us at royalcougars.com. You can follow me personally at Kyle Ireland. But until next week, this has been the Royal Cougars podcast.